So I thought I would just really quickly talk about who we are as Voice for Change England. We're a national membership-led body and an intermediary grants body. So we offer a lot of financial support, advice, and policy outreach, just to see that the BME voluntary and community sector is as strong and as united as it can be, to ensure that, their voices are heard at high levels of policy decision making, and as well as getting the funding that they need. So a big part of this work is just ensuring that, racial equity stays high on the agenda and it continues to be prioritized. So part of this is extending our work as well to the climate crisis. This gives us an amazing opportunity, I think, to reach out to environmentalists and creators like yourself, to, hoping that you can shed light on why the environment is for everyone and how, we can all get involved. So to kick things off, I thought, could you please introduce yourself and Twipes, and what your journey has been like so far?
Of course. So my name is Ellenor McIntosh. I am the scientist, CTO, and inventor of Twipes. We make the world's first truly flushable, truly biodegradable wet wipe. Our wipes break down in water within 3 hours and break down in landfill within 7 days. So to give you some context, 7 days is the amount of time it takes for a banana peel to actually break down, and 3 hours is the fastest on the market currently. In terms of our journey, where we've been, so we started in the UK. I started this business a while ago now. It took about 4 to 5 years of R&D. So we were making sure the product is safe for use on everyone. And now we've got a product that we've able to launch in the UK. We're able to launch in the States. And it's just been an amazing journey for us. We've been really, really grateful for having all the support that we've had. And at the moment, it's really hitting the ground running. It's really taking off, and we're really excited to see where it goes even further.
Yeah, that's amazing. I think that's one of the things that caught my eye as well when I stumbled on Twipes, which is I think how clear the brand and the messaging is. I hadn't really thought too much about, whether if a company says something's actually biodegradable, is it? And then along the way, I also stumbled on the topic of like fatbergs, which I'd never heard about before. Microplastics we hear about a lot. So I was wondering if you could explain a little bit about, what fatbergs are and how Twipes helps alleviate that.
Of course. So fatbergs, if you've never heard of what a fatberg is, I'm sure you've heard of an iceberg, right? So an iceberg is when there's like a pile of ice under the water, Titanic, all the rest of it. But in terms of fatbergs, what happens is you flush a wet wipe down the toilet. What happens is you add fogs, so fats, oils, and greases down the toilets in the pipes. And what would happen is the wipes get stuck on pipes. And then after all the fogs come in, fats, oils, and greases, it creates a lump and it creates a fatberg in the pipes, which is disgusting. It's absolutely disgusting. It's not just a blockage, it's like a whole devastation. So in 2017, the fatberg that was found under Whitechapel in East London was like something like a ton. After that, it was actually our job as a company got a lot easier telling people in the UK, hey, don't flush your wet wipes. They're like, oh, we know because we saw the fatberg.
Yeah, that's amazing, honestly. And it just goes to show, I think, like in our day to day, like there's so much plastic in everything that we use without knowing, whether it's even like toothbrush heads or not. So I think it's a really positive sign to see what Twipes is doing, and also to see just the market in general is coming up with a lot of like alternatives. Like I'm seeing like loo roll, more like friendly like cleaning items as well. So it's really good to see. Yeah, just moving on, I just wanted to ask, what are some of the best ways, in your opinion, to really normalize and mainstream making, I think, better habits, better swaps, where it's easy enough to do so.
So, in terms of making easier swaps, as a company, we pride ourselves on people changing their product and not their behavior. So, our product is extremely accessible to people. And I think this is where the biggest challenge comes from people wanting to be eco friendly. So, if we take, for example, a vegan diet, people want to be vegan, or people want to be vegan for the environmental reasons, but being vegan is significantly more expensive than not being vegan. So what happens is you have a group of people who can afford to be vegan and choose to be vegan, over the general population. And I think accessibility of those products and accessibility of eco-friendly goods, making sure that they're available for everyone, is super important. Making sure that they're at the right price point, so it's not just a specific group of people or a specific demographic that can access these eco-friendly swaps.
Yeah, no, I think that's really important, and it feeds in really well to, what we talk about when we talk about climate justice and fairness. Not everyone can afford to purchase, good food that's fresh. And healthy and good for you. But I think that leads us well into the next sort of like area, which is, what does fairness and justice in the climate movement mean to you? Because I think nowadays when we talk about climate change, we're not just talking about reducing our emissions, reducing our carbon footprint. We're talking about, who has fair access to green space, who is sort of disproportionately exposed to, air pollution, polluted
Mm.
waterways. So I wondered what your thoughts were on that.
It comes from all different levels. So we've got our governing bodies in our respective countries, towns, areas that need to increase their transparency levels. So we don't know fully what's happening with our environment because nobody's telling us. And the people who are telling us may not necessarily give us the full picture. So what ends up happening is we're like, oh, we know that the climate is changing. We don't know at what rate, we don't know how quickly, we don't know what we can do to change it. And as a governing body or as a business, I think all businesses, there's the ESG goals that a lot of businesses have, but I think there needs to be more stringency on that. People need to be stricter. Businesses need to be stricter in what they're doing. I think there needs to be an increase in welfare of people. Businesses take responsibility for the welfare of their customers, but I think it goes beyond that. And I think that as a governing body, especially, there needs to be more in place where we can offer access to people, allowing them to be more eco friendly, put the climate first, but also put the people who are living in these areas first.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think like the climate space can be very intimidating to get involved with at the beginning. Like I remember, being recently a student and thinking that getting involved in the climate space wasn't really for me because maybe I didn't have, a science background or anything.
Mm.
So you're right, there's so much information and there's a lot of noise, and it's hard to, even as a consumer, actually, make the right decisions when you're, pressed for time and everything.
It shouldn't be so difficult. It shouldn't be so
Yeah,
difficult to access those spaces or to access eco-friendly alternatives.
yeah.
I think equality of access is the biggest thing we can do in terms of climate and social justice, like making sure that there isn't accessibility to everyone, regardless of race, gender, financials, all of it. I think there needs to be an equality of access for sure.
Yeah, absolutely. So moving on a little bit, I was just wondering, what are your thoughts on, in a way, bringing, activism and business together to sort of tackle both, our social and environmental problems that, are often very, intertwined in a very complex way. I think a lot of us, particularly if you're starting out in your career and you're looking for a job, you want to feel that where you work somewhat, represents your values and what you stand for and care about. So I just wondered, what was your journey like, sort of graduating, deciding to start Twipes?
In terms of where I started, I always loved the environment. I was always obsessed. Even as a kid, I was the one sorting out recycling in my household. I was the one who was literally like, oh, the planet is changing. And I was a very strange child. I won't give you too much of the background, but I was worried about things that was way beyond my age. Kids were playing with dolls. I was like, so what's going to happen in Y2K? Like, are we going to, is the whole planet shutting down? I was pretty young. So I've always been naturally drawn to this. And when we started the business, I was already aware of the challenges that we were facing as a as a as a group of people. It's like, well, you can't use wet wipes. Wet wipes don't flush. It may say flushable on the packet, but it doesn't flush. And the whole idea was generated from the fact that we sat down and we talked about this. And I said, well, I already know this. And my friend was like, how did you know? I was like, because I pay attention. And it really came from an interest of the environment. And I know not everybody has that, but I think businesses and any job you go into, it should be absolutely transparent on what they do in order to make their pledge towards the environment in some way. It can be small, but it needs to be significant.
Yeah, absolutely. And so, I was wondering, how would you then encourage more people, I think, to, get involved in the climate movement, not just in their, day-to-day, consumption and behavior habits, but, going beyond that as well. Because, I don't know what your experience has been with this, but I feel as though we all sort of, somewhere along the line, we all start very differently, but we experience that shift from focusing on individual action to seeing the individual that's within part of the system that we're subject to and, wanting to change that as well along the way. So I was just wondering if you've experienced a very similar kind of shift before.
I'm going to say something a little bit different here, but I think that us as individuals, we do as much as we possibly can, most of us do, as
Yeah.
much as we possibly can to decrease our carbon footprint or to do something that will help with the environment. I think we see so many adverts being like, you have to do this, just make one change, and da 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 da. And I think that's really important that us as individuals continue to do this. But there are huge, huge corporations that are responsible
Yeah.
for the climate crisis. So to put all of the onus on the individual, and yes, we are working towards a bigger system, it's great, but we don't contribute as individuals, we do not contribute to the climate change. Like there's 100 energy companies that contribute to 71% of the global emissions, like in the world.
Yeah.
100 companies. And if 100 of those companies just made a small shift, we would be able to reduce those emissions. So I think it's really unfair to blame or to like put more onus on individuals because we are doing the best we can. We've been told don't drive. I mean, in London alone, you've got the ultra low emission zones.
Yes.
You've got the congestion charge where people are paying out of their pocket and sometimes they have to drive to work. They've got no other choice. You know, they've got no other choice to do this. But then you've got these huge corporations that are doing not enough. They're probably still doing some things, but they're not doing enough to actually try and change the environment that we live in. It's not good enough anymore to just say, oh yeah, we're green because we plant a load of trees. We plant a load of unindigenous trees on the Scottish Highlands, chop them down after 5 years and do the same thing. And then we can say, oh great, we're carbon neutral. It's just not good enough. And then the cheek to put all of that onus on individuals is absolutely shocking to me.
Yeah, yeah. No, it is outrageous, like the tree planting especially.
Oh,
I think that's the thing as well when you look at the climate solutions at very like high levels of like policy and politics that are being where a lot of money is being poured towards it. For example, like carbon capture storage
mm,
technologies, even though, the evidence behind it it's not fully there yet. And yet, we're seeing a massive shift in like resources towards that. Whereas, it could have gone towards anything else to tackle fuel poverty,
yeah,
to tackle the millions that are living in very cold, damp, and moldy houses. So, yeah, no, it is quite outrageous, and I do think that whilst it's good to emphasize, how individuals can be a part of this, and bring their own like strengths. It's also important to notice that, we're limited if we don't change, the system and the structure that we're working within. So, I think that's really
exactly.
important. Yeah.
Exactly. And
Um,
individuals try. We all try our best to do,
yeah.
it's about a million people doing things imperfectly rather than like 100 doing it perfectly,
Definitely. Yeah, I think having gone like vegetarian myself for a year, I realized, it's more important to be realistic and stick to, say, being vegetarian maybe like 4 days out of the week than just going completely vegan. And I think if everyone did that, then yeah, you're right. It does make a difference, particularly when we're talking about, this cultural shift that needs to happen. But I just wondered as well, in a way to sort of top things off, do you have any advice as an environmentalist and a very young entrepreneur who's had loads of success already? I'm very excited for what's to come for you. Do you have any advice for anyone who's, looking to get into the climate tech space, pursue a green job, or simply just looking for, any way to get involved in whether that's in their local communities or not.
I would say the same advice that I give to people who want to start businesses. Talk. You have to talk to people. If you're interested in a climate job or you're interested in making a difference within your community, tell people that. You know that you do yourself no favors holding all of that information in and going, I really want to start something, but I don't know where to start. The first step is talking to somebody. That's exactly how our business was started. You know, we sat down and we had a conversation, and the conversation turned to toilets because of course it did. It turned to toilets, and then Twipes was born. Like we had a conversation about it. We were sort of like discussing frustrations, and I sort of said, well, this is why. And once that conversation started, the ball just got rolling, and that was from one conversation. We immediately went, there's something there. And until you have that conversation with somebody, you'll never know. You'll just never know. So speak to the people in your community if you want to do a community project. Speak to your family and friends if you want to get into those jobs, because chances are somebody knows somebody.
Yeah, I think that's really great advice. I think like to basically not gatekeep, the more people you talk to, you never know,
Mm,
what that could lead to. So it's good that I think we're seeing a shift in terms of people being less elusive maybe about, the jobs that they have, the area that they're working
yeah.
in. Because I think it gives like people in school and educate higher education like a chance to actually look at what they're getting themselves into and whether it's the right path for them.
Mm.
Um,
And people
yeah,
want to
just
help. People
yeah,
want to help you. If you
yeah.
ask, you will receive. You have to ask first.
You don't ask, you don't get. Yeah,
Exactly.
exactly. Um, I think that those are unfortunately all the questions that I had for you today. But it's been an absolute pleasure speaking to you, Elle.
Take care. Bye
Thank
bye.
you. Bye.